This is Esther Saxey with an incredibly quick introduction to choosing your methodology. First question, what is a methodology? It's a system, it's an approach, a set of tools and expectations for going about your data collection in a particular, structured, pre-planned way. It's about choosing in advance where to look and how you're going to interpret that data when you've got it. Second question, why do you need a methodology at all? Well, you want to find out the answer to something useful. And you want it to not just be something that you reckon, you want the answer to be reliable and valid, and you want to be able to demonstrate, if anyone asks, why you think you found the answer. Methodologies offer systematic approaches to investigation. And also, as a result, they're a kind of shortcut. People have used them before, they found out what each one is good for and their limitations. So save yourself some time by using those tools. It might sound obvious, but you've got to ask yourself, will the information that I can get from this approach actually tell me what I want to know? You'll have to explore whether your question and your methodology are a good match for each other. And that'll involve some exploring what kind of question your research question actually is at heart. Let's give a couple of examples. So, if your question was about objective outcomes, does something concrete exist? Has something happened? If so, then the kind of data that's offered by, for example, people self-reporting on their own beliefs and perceptions probably isn't going to cut it for you. On the other hand, is your question more about causation, explanations, why things have happened, might encounter beliefs and values or people's behaviours, in which case you will need something that is more human-focused. Now, this kind of tension often gets boiled down to a stark choice: qualitative, quantitative, or both. I'm going to give really simplified accounts of both sides here, but it may help you to weigh up your options. Qualitative research works with data and findings that are not expressed in numbers. So it can, as a result, look a little more subjective and less rigorous than quantitative research. It can also be harder to replicate and sometimes less easy to extrapolate from. It's also denser to interpret at times, but it does offer a richness and a nuance and an insight into areas that sometimes quantitative research struggles to get to grips with. And it can be just as rigorous. Quantitative research works with data and findings that are expressed in numbers. And it can seem more reliable, more valid, less subjective, like, wow, you have really found a concrete thing there. It can also be easier to interpret the data and to present your findings so that other people can understand them. It can also be easier to replicate studies, but it can create issues of false validity, like, have you really actually found a concrete thing there? Also, there are issues of scale and representativeness, which can affect its validity. Have you, for example, surveyed enough people to actually find something of value? So again, the tools you choose are going to be dictated by the type of question you're trying to answer. Think about, is the scale appropriate? If you're using a survey, would you need, for example, to survey 1,000 people in order to get a decent, valid result? Will it be possible to follow the methodology in the time available, and that includes both gathering in the data and then analysing it and interpreting the findings? Can you get access to the people or the places or the data sets that you'd want to use? Also, is your study ethical? And remember that some of your team members may already have strengths in terms of research and analytical tools that they could use. If you've watched the short film on the research process, then you'll know there's often some back and forth between refining your research question and actually doing some research. The more you find out, the more you can sharpen up your question. I'd say there's also some two-way adjustment between your proposed question and your desired method. If you're really drawn to using one method and it doesn't fit your question, maybe it's your question that needs to change slightly. Maybe it doesn't currently describe what you're really interested in finding out. You may also find that you want to use more than one method to tackle different aspects of the same question. Doing this could create something that's much more stronger and more persuasive if the findings agree with each other, or more complex and more interesting if they seem to conflict with each other. Obviously, that would take up more time, but your team could split to work on two different methodologies simultaneously. So what kinds of methodology are actually available to you? This is going to be an incredibly brief introduction. We've got questionnaires and short interviews. These are great for getting questions, often close-ended questions, answered by a lot of people. It can be hard to obtain useful response rates that will make it valid, but it can give clear, quantitative data, which is relatively quick and easy to interpret. In-depth interviews and focus groups. This is good for more open-ended information from a smaller number of people. It's great for answering questions about why and how. Focus groups are very good for taking into account interactions between people as well as individual opinions. These can lead to a mass of data that need to be coded and interpreted, which can take more time. Observation is fantastic for finding out people's behaviours, what they do rather than what they say they do or what they think. Conversely, observation on its own can't tell you much about their motivation or the meaning attached to what they're doing. There are ethical issues attached to observing people. Ethnography of communities, of places, of online communities is a form of observation, but it takes a rich approach, including aspects that may not be included in a simpler observation. It's more concerned with meaning making. Moving away from working directly with people, we've got media analysis, looking at news and commentary, and this could include visual and textual aspects. Discourse analysis is a close, focused analysis of a particular body of texts. Mapping is observing and recording things in physical space in order to answer questions. Network analysis is a kind of conceptual mapping, recording connections between people, organisations, and entities to find out more about how they interact. And you might find in your research that it's profitable to draw on existing data sets rather than always creating your own. There are a lot more of these available thanks to the technological age. We've got demographics, we've got prices, we've got information about the environment. Now, in my efforts to introduce these in an incredibly short period of time, I've presented them as more or less equivalent, but actually some of them are pure data collection tools, whereas some of them are more clusters of tools or approaches which put those tools to a certain purpose. Two of the most common overall methods of investigation are case studies and comparative analysis. The case studies approach involves the in-depth investigation of a group, a company, or a situation. Often these combine several methodologies and kinds of data collection in order to create these studies. Comparative analysis involves finding the distinctions between two comparable alternatives in order to understand both of them better. Again, this could include several methods of data collection and analysis. We have created some short films on key methods, but we are really open to you using other methodologies if you're interested in them. As long as you end up with a methodology that provides the information which will help you to answer your research question. And it's a methodology that you can fit within your time frame, including gathering the data and analysing and interpreting it. And it's one that you can do ethically, and it's one that you will find interesting to use. Good luck.